All right, so let's get right into it. For thousands of years, the Christian faith has been challenged by, some of the most brilliant minds in history. But now, in the age of social media, the whole debate seems to boil down to just one simple viral question. You know the one I'm talking about. It's always framed as the ultimate gotcha question, right? The one that's supposed to be so devastating, it just completely unravels the whole idea of a creator. I bet you've seen it pop up online, usually drop like it's the final word in any argument.
And there it is, the question that's meant to stop the conversation dead in its tracks. It seems logical, right? If God created everything, then who created God? Well, here's the twist. According to the thinkers we're going to be looking at today, this isn't a tough question. They'd say it's actually a nonsensical one. So let's break down exactly why.
Okay, so to really get the response here, we've got to first make sure we're all on the same page about the terms of the debate. The whole argument hinges on this idea that the question itself, well, it's based on a fundamental misunderstanding of what's even being claimed about God in the first place.
The key idea here is something philosophers call a category error. Basically, when you ask who created God, you're already assuming God is the kind of thing that can be created. You're putting God in the created things category. But the whole claim of, traditional theology and philosophy is that God is, by definition, uncreated and eternal. So asking who created the uncreated being, it's like asking what does the color blue taste like? The question just kind of short-circuits itself.
And this right here, this is the absolute core of the misunderstanding. You'll often hear the claim presented as everything needs a creator. But see, no serious theologian or philosopher actually argues that. The real argument is much more precise. It's everything that begins to exist needs a cause. See the difference? That little phrase, begins to exist, is everything. The universe, as modern science tells us, had a beginning. God, by the very definition we're working with here, did not. Okay, but wait, this brings up a pretty obvious question, doesn't it? If something has to be the eternal, uncaused first cause, why can't that just be the universe itself? And you know what? For a very long time, that was the main scientific and philosophical view. So you see, for centuries, the big debate wasn't about a universe with a beginning versus a God with a beginning. Nope, it was a clash of eternals. On one side, you had thinkers arguing that God was the eternal, uncaused reality. And on the other, you had materialists and many scientists arguing that the universe itself, all the matter and energy, was the eternal thing. That it had just always been here, no creator needed. And this quote from Richard Dawkins, man, it just perfectly sums up the worldview that comes from that idea of an eternal universe. If matter is all there is, and all there ever was, well, then things like purpose or design are just illusions we invent. It's all just blind, pitiless indifference. Pretty bleak, right? But then the 20th century rolled around, and science itself threw a massive wrench into that entire way of thinking. And this is where the story gets really, really interesting. A whole series of mind-blowing discoveries in cosmology completely flipped the script on that centuries-old idea of an eternal universe. Just look at this timeline. It's an incredible story of a scientific revolution. You start in 1917, and even Albert Einstein is so convinced the universe is eternal and static that he literally invents a fudge factor, his cosmological constant, just to make his equations fit that belief. But then, boom, just a decade later, Edwin Hubble sees that distant galaxies are flying away from us. The universe is expanding. By 1931, even Einstein has to throw in the towel and call it the biggest blunder of his life. And it all leads to Stephen Hawking's work, which basically showed that if you rewind that expansion, everything collapses down to a single point, a genuine beginning for space, for matter, and for time itself. And you can't overstate the philosophical shockwaves this sent out. This wasn't just some dry scientific data point. It was a direct challenge to a dominant worldview. You have this famous astronomer, Sir Arthur Eddington, who actually said the idea of a beginning was repugnant to him. Think about that. He was basically admitting that his philosophy, his worldview, was making him want to reject the scientific evidence. And it wasn't just one thing. The evidence just kept mounting. It wasn't only the expansion. We found the leftover heat from that initial explosion, the cosmic microwave background radiation. It's like the echo of the Big Bang. Then you have the second law of thermodynamics. This is the one that says things tend to run down, right? Like a wind-up toy. Well, if the universe had been around for eternity, it would have wound down an infinitely long time ago. There'd be no usable energy left. So as the physicist Alexander Vilenkin puts it pretty bluntly,
All the evidence we have says that the universe had a beginning.
So here's the bottom line. If the science says the universe began to exist, then it can't be its own uncaused cause. That's just a logical contradiction. Something can't create itself because it would have to exist before it existed to do the creating. Which leaves us with a really fascinating question. If the universe didn't cause itself, what can we figure out about whatever did?
And this is where we shift gears a little, from pure science to philosophy, but using that scientific evidence as our starting point. It's almost like being a detective. We can build a profile of the culprit, the first cause, just by looking at the evidence left at the crime scene, which is, the entire universe.
All right, let's just walk through this chain of logic one step at a time. First, if time itself began, then its cause must be outside of time, so timeless. Second, if space began, the cause must be outside of space, so spaceless. Third, if matter and energy began, the cause must be non-physical or immaterial. That makes sense, right? Now, to create a whole universe from nothing, that's going to require some serious unimaginable power. And to produce a universe with such intricate laws and fine-tuning, well, that suggests some kind of vast intelligence. And here's the last step. To go from not creating to creating requires a choice, a decision. Impersonal forces like gravity don't make choices. Only a personal agent, a mind, can do that. So, what are we left with? A timeless, spaceless, immaterial, incredibly powerful, intelligent, personal cause. And yeah, if that's starting to sound a lot like the classic definition of God, that's exactly the point of this whole line of reasoning. But it brings up another huge question, maybe the biggest one of all. How are we supposed to even wrap our heads around a being like that?
And let's just be real for a second. Trying to imagine something that has no beginning, no before, it's almost impossible for us. Our brains just aren't built for it. We live and breathe inside of time. But here's the counterpoint. Just because we can't fully understand something doesn't automatically make it false. Maybe it just means our minds have limits.
There's this great story from Oxford professor John Lennox that nails this point. He was in a debate and a physicist told him the idea of God was just absurd. So Lennox turned it around. He said, okay, tell me what consciousness is. The physicist couldn't. All right, then tell me what energy is. And the physicist had to admit, I don't know what it is, I only know what it does. And that was Lennox's whole point. We believe in all sorts of things, fundamental parts of reality, that we don't fully understand at all.
And that really gets us to the heart of the argument. It's not about full comprehension, it's about explanatory power. What's the best explanation for what we see? We accept that consciousness is real because it's the best explanation for our subjective experience. We accept that energy is real because it's the best explanation for, well, everything happening. And the argument here is that the concept of God works the same way, that it's the best explanation for why there's a universe at all. So when you boil it all down, this whole line of thought really ends with a choice between two options. Given what science tells us, that the universe had a beginning, which of these makes more sense? Option 1. The entire universe, all of time, space, matter, and energy, just popped into being from literally nothing, for no reason and by no cause. Or option 2. It was brought into being by something that is beyond time, beyond space, and powerful enough to do it. That's the fundamental choice this argument puts on the table.